Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe to start with a couple of words to introduce HouseTrip. So I hope most of you are already familiar with us, but in short, we're a marketplace for short-term renters where you can find around 300,000 great properties at incredible prices. So you can see on the screen a couple of screenshots just to give you an idea of the proposition to travelers. If you go to Paris, the average price for an apartment on HouseTrip that sleeps 4 people is €110 a night. And for that, you get a whole apartment that sleeps 4 people. So it's obviously much, much better than what you will get if you chose a hotel, where in Paris for €110 a night, you'd be very lucky if you get 12 square meter, 2-star hotel room. So that's the proposition. HouseTrip is a company that started with a trip that I made together with my wife. Well, she was not my wife at the time. That was when we were both students at the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, a hospitality management school. And 2007, we decided to travel to Edinburgh in Scotland. And studying hotels, we were a bit bored with hotels, and we decided to try something different. We decided to try and book an apartment for the stay, and we did, and we absolutely fell in love with the experience, having your own apartment in a foreign city, being able to really feed the local pulse. We bought, I remember, haggis at the local supermarket, which is a Scottish delicacy, which is not great. Right. Yeah, better. And we cooked it in our own kitchen. I mean, that was really a eye-opening experience for us. And plus, the whole apartment was way cheaper than a hotel room. What we didn't like during that trip was the booking process. It took us like almost 2 days full time to book that place. We had to call the owner and negotiate the price on the phone. We had to sign a contract, send it by fax. We had to go to a Western Union agency to pay for the place. So we were like, wait a minute, like, what if we made it as easy to find those great short-term renters that are all over the world? What if we made it as easy to find those places and to book those places as it is to book hotels? Then if we do that, a lot more people are going to travel, use that type of accommodation when they travel. And yeah, I mean, so far that hypothesis has been verified, because 4 years after creating the company, we have those 300,000 properties on the website. More than 7 million nights have been booked on HouseTrip, and we are now 200 people in the team. So we've seen very, very rapid growth. But the subject of today is what is restricting us in our growth, what kind of backlash we've seen. And so there are 2 topics under that. The first one is the trust and reassurance topic, and the second one is the regulatory topic, because there are a number of legislation and countries trying to forbid us. So to start with the trust and reassurance, I'm going to speak about more the guest side of things. The reason for that is that while the host side has never been a big problem for us, we've done a huge amount of work on the guest side to ensure that our guests never run into any problem. And we just wanted to share what we've done with you. So I thought it would be interesting to start with an example. You're all probably familiar with Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform. I was looking at Kickstarter and stumbled upon this project, the Cryptech USB project, that received about $200,000 in funding via Kickstarter from 989 people. And obviously the promise was, if you fund it, then you're going to ultimately receive a USB key from them, and so on and so forth. But the funding was completed in December 2011, and no one has heard from Cryptech since. So people were like starting to soon when they noticed that the company has simply disappeared with the $200,000, they started to blame Kickstarter. They were like, you need to stand behind your project, and you need to be on insurance if something goes wrong. So in short, they wanted Kickstarter to be more than a mere marketplace that puts the funder with the fundies together. They wanted Kickstarter to stand behind its project. And to me, that's a key topic in the sharing economy today. Sharing economy companies need to strike the right border between the pure marketplace model, which is only a place where people meet, and the etailer model, where the seller, in that case Amazon, really stands behind the product that are on its website and is a guarantor of quality. A pure online marketplace, in my view, will inevitably face problems like Kickstarter. Buyers will always argue they need to see some form of quality insurance, and sharing economy companies need to pay a lot of attention to really think about what that means for them and to strike the balance between those two models. For us, the journey started with us thinking naively that we could be a pure marketplace because we thought that our business model alone was a guarantee of quality. We thought that our business model is that the guest pays HouseTrip when they book, but HouseTrip pays the host after the check-in. So we thought that if the host only gets paid after they deliver the service, they had to make sure that that service was at least up to the guest expectation. So because we had that model, things will sort of work on their own. So we wanted to be a pure marketplace like that, but we were naive, and it's never that simple. Very soon we noticed we had 3 types of problematic hosts happening. So the first type were actual scammers, people listing a fake property, which I never really understood why they were doing that, because they will never get paid, but yet they did that. B, we had hosts who tried to play around the system. So for instance, we saw a lot of hosts had a property next to a big city, so not in the city, but they listed their address as being in the city because they will get more demand from people looking for the city name in HouseTrip. And lastly, we had hosts who simply didn't care much about providing a good service to their guests, so canceling on their guests before their stay, and so on and so forth. So, as those problems, as we grew, those problems became bigger, and we soon noticed we really had to find the right solutions around those issues because we are starting to face the problem that Kickstarter was starting to face, that we need to, be a stamp of quality on our supply and on our host, because at the end of the day, we're like a franchise with 300,000 franchisees. We're our host, and we're only as good as them. So if you have a bad experience when you book on HouseTrip, you're not only going to blame the host, you're going to blame HouseTrip. So we put in place a couple of, a few countermeasures. The first one is our holiday guarantee program, which is if your stay gets cancelled by the host or the property for some reason is not as described or not according to your expectation when you check in, we relocate you for free immediately. The second program that we run is we have a big quality control team that systematically reviews every property that gets listed on HouseTrip for scams and inaccuracy. The third measure that we took is more of technological innovation, I would say, is we have something that we call our supply quality score. So each property that gets listed on HouseTrip gets given a score, and that score is basically a mix of everything that we can calculate that will make the host a good host, a guest-friendly host, and the property a guest-friendly property. So, for instance, things like whether the host keeps their calendar up to date, things like whether the amount of time that the host takes to reply to messages from guests, whether the host cancels on guests, and so on and so forth. And we make that score transparent to the host. and that defines the ranking in the search. So the message is, if you have a great score, it means that you're guest-friendly, and if you're guest-friendly, you have a great ranking in our search, and you earn more money through HouseTrip, and we run an ongoing education program of that to our hosts to make sure that they all strive to have a good quality score. Lastly, we've built a very large customer service team with about 100 people, so available 24/7. And the last thing that we've put in place is our host cancellation policy. So if a host cancels on their guests, we have a 3 strikes and out policy, which is a deterrent to them canceling. So the question is, are we still a marketplace? So the answer, to give a Chinese answer, since being married to a Chinese, I start to speak a bit like that. We're a marketplace with etailer characteristics. I think it's Deng Xiaoping who said they're a communist country with capitalist characteristics. But at the end of the day, again, to quote another Deng Xiaoping quote, a cat that catches a mice is a good cat. And in our case, catching mice means high guest satisfaction. Thanks to the fact that we run those programs, that we stand behind the quality of our properties, that we make sure that the hosts are guest-friendly. Our Net Promoter Score, which is a measure of satisfaction, is more than 70% post-stay. So that's the satisfaction score of our guests, which is extremely high. And it's way, way, way above the industry average, which is the online travel industry average, which is about 0%, as you can see on those Net Promoter Score benchmarks. I think the worst industry, if I'm not mistaken, must be the banking industry, which is negative. It's at like minus 10%. So, yeah, because we do all the things, guests who book on HouseTrip are extremely satisfied with their experience, and the positive thing for us is that then they keep coming back, and we have very loyal guests. So yeah, at the end of the day, I guess that if you want to create a company in the sharing economy, you need to ask yourself the right questions, which is, where do I need to step in, to prevent situations that lead to a bad experience, and ultimately that will lead to a mistrust towards my brand. So if something does go wrong, what are my policies to save the satisfaction of the affected customers? So you need to find the right positioning for you on the etailer marketplace balance to get the best of both worlds. And the only way to know if you found the right balance is if you have satisfied customers. Now, onto my second topic, second backlash, the regulatory backlash. So you've probably seen it in the news. Our model has seen quite a lot of backlash from regulators and governments in places like New York City, France, Berlin, Spain, or Amsterdam. We've also seen a tiny bit in a number of other places, like, for instance, I heard of something here in Zurich where some real estate management company were complaining that their tenants were illegally renting out on HouseTrip or Airbnb. But those 5 places here is where we've seen the biggest problem. And what they mostly say, those regulators, those governments, is that we're creating a housing issue, that properties that could be rented out long-term to locals are being rented out short-term to tourists, and therefore is creating a housing shortage. But lobbying from the hotel industry certainly isn't helping. There are a number of CEOs from big hotel groups, like the Intercontinental Hotel Group CEO, which is the largest hotel group in the world, that have gone on record, but also mostly being, lobbying directly to the legislators to fight against our model, which is, quite a big threat to the hotel industry, since consumers love our model so much. So our position, our answer to the backlash and the arguments from the legislators, which are mostly around this housing issue, is that we completely understand there are housing issues in some destinations. And we understand if there are some new legislations that say that properties that can be rented long-term shouldn't be rented short-term, but also we don't understand that properties that cannot be rented long-term shouldn't be allowed to be rented short-term, if that makes sense. So for instance, there are a number of people who have a pied-à-terre in Paris, a second home, and so on and so forth. By definition, if you have a pied-à-terre or a second home in Paris, you want to stay there at least a few weeks a year. So when you're not there, why should we forbid you to rent it short-term to tourists? Because that's never going to go back on the long-term market. So I think that any legislation, any law has to be reasonable. If we come back to the very spirit of the sharing economy is all about adding secondary and tertiary uses to assets. So when it comes to home, if you buy a holiday home somewhere, its primary use is to use it as a holiday home, right? And the sharing economy is about empowering you to add a secondary use to that asset, which is when you're not there to rent it out to tourists, and so on and so forth. So that's the spirit of the sharing economy. We understand that in some cases it might be negative if the sharing part is the primary use of the property, but I don't see any negative consequences if it's the secondary or tertiary use. So it was a bit of a scary time for us when I didn't expect when I created the HouseTrip that country after the other, one country after the other, I will have to fight against governments trying to forbid us. So that sort of happened from one day to the other last year. So I had to, learn how to deal with governments from scratch. So how do you go about making yourself heard by the legislators? Well, simply you go and speak to them. Our approach has simply been to try and reason directly with them, because we have strong arguments, I think, for our case, and also to make our case in the media to show the legislators that it's something that people care about. And wanted to stress that not all legislators have been aggressive or bad. Actually, there is a perfect counterexample, which is the UK, when France is currently trying to do a new law to forbid us in large French cities. So the approach has been, the new share economy is creating a housing shortage. Let's forbid the whole thing. The UK government approach has been, okay, we see that the sharing economy is an interesting new model. It creates growth. It creates a lot of revenue for a lot of people. So let us invite the main actors to Downing Street, number 10, and try to understand what we can do to help them grow while avoiding negative consequences on society. So I was like, whoa, it can go easily too. And as you can see in the invitation, let's say the purpose of the event is to examine what obstacles the UK government can help remove. It's also an opportunity to look forward to a strategy that sees the UK at the forefront of a fundamental change in how we produce, consume, and deliver. So those are the two approaches. Either forbid everything because change is bad, vested interest needs to stay in place, or trying to embrace change, innovation to foster growth, and so on and so forth. I think at the end of the day, the UK approach is completely the right one. In my view, the sharing economy is happening, and for plenty of reasons, it is a good thing. First of all, it allows us to monetize our assets better. Secondly, it leads to less wastage in society at large, because assets are used more efficiently. And thirdly, it provides badly needed growth for the economy and real money to real people. So some governments are smart and will reap the benefits, ask them how to foster the movement to really benefit from it, and others will simply just miss out and be left behind. So small, cheesy conclusion. It all started with a trip, and it's proving to be quite a trip. And of course, like in any trip, the experience is much easier when it is shared. So to end the quote with a bit cheesy quote, never go on trips with anyone you do not love. And he was right. It makes the whole thing much easier and much better. And on that, thanks a lot.